Okay. So, welcome everyone. We are so excited to have you joining us for Career Day 2023. My name is Megan Bickford, and I am a Career Services team member here at SNHU. I'm here today to facilitate this session. So, you'll see me in the chat responding throughout the session or collecting questions for Peter to answer at the end when we will be holding a 15-minute Q&A session. So he'll cover approximately 30 minutes of content, and then we'll go into a Q&A session following that. So please, throughout the session, as you see things and you have questions, please put them in the chat for me to keep track of, and we can, ask them at the end. So before we get started, we have a few important announcements. This session is being recorded, so please know there is no obligation to have your camera on or to use the chat to be able to participate and just take in the content that's here today. You can turn on the captions for this session by selecting the More button at the top of your team screen, and then you would select Turn on Live Captions from the drop-down menu. Your microphone is going to remain muted today to reduce background noise as these sessions are recorded. And that also means that while many of you have really great virtual etiquette by using the hand raising feature in Teams, we won't be able to call on you and unmute you. So you'll want to make sure you, again, engage with the chat, put your comments and questions in there. We do ask that you be kind and refrain from using inappropriate language or sharing any offensive or deeply personal content. This is a professional space that we want everyone to feel included and safe within. We're all here to learn and engage with this community, so we really appreciate your cooperation. Please do not photograph, screenshot, or record anyone in attendance. Presentation slides may include clickable links. For those viewing this presentation on a mobile device, we will be including links in the chat additionally so that you aren't taken away from the presentation by clicking on something. You will see that Teams offers helpful presentation options like changing the written language of the slides and the opportunity to move through the slides at your own pace. If you move through the slides at your own pace and then you wish to get back to the slide that is currently being discussed, you will see that there is a red box that says Sync to Presenter that you'll be able to click on, and this will not impact anybody else's viewing experience. Peter, when you're ready for the next slide. Okay. So now I'd like to take a moment to share SNHU's access and accommodations information, which serves as a reminder of resources available for our community members. Your experience here at Southern New Hampshire University is important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this presentation's design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the appropriate department. For online students, please connect with the Online Accessibility Center by emailing oac@snhu.edu or by phone at 866-305-9430. For campus students, please contact the Campus Accessibility Center by emailing cac@snhu.edu or by phone at 603-644-3118. For staff and faculty, please contact the Human Resources Office by email at hr@snhu.edu. Okay. So now it's time to introduce our presenter. So Peter can have this poll question up, but just to make sure we get the opportunity to do this, I'm thrilled to be getting you started with the Win the Career Fair presentation presented by Peter Bartel from our Employer Relations team here in Career Services at Southern New Hampshire University. Peter was born and raised in Rochester, New York, where he attended SUNY Brockport for his Bachelor's of Science in Communications with a concentration in broadcast journalism. Later on, Peter obtained his master's in entrepreneurial business management. Peter has worked in university admissions, recruiting, and most recently career services, where he holds 15 years of experience. Peter works every day with his students and alumni on connecting them with jobs that meet their career goals. Peter has cultivated relationships with several high level representatives to assist in connecting his students and alumni with employment opportunities in the past. Through working with companies at the large, mid sized, and small sized levels, Peter has learned expertise in assisting job seekers to adapt to an effective job search that would pertain to the specific organization and their application process. Um, so, without further ado, I will pass the virtual microphone over to Peter. Apologies for my
Thanks.
coughing, everyone. I'm coming off of a cold. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. So you guys see the poll question already, right? But Megan's gonna put a quick like thumbs up or thumbs down, yes or no, in the chat. Has attending job fairs been valuable for you in the past? So she'll make it go live here in a second. You can give your input. I see Stephanie already stated that she's never attended one. Thomas said first one, good. So and while Megan just shared that form, that poll. Just know that you can actually there's now like virtual and on-site job fairs. You're probably maybe wondering that, right, as you're completing that question. So we're going to go over both of them in this session, not just one or the other, because it's important, right? Sometimes you can only do virtually, sometimes the company only offers virtual or on-site. So a lot of people saying so far initially 80%, 88% now that they have been valuable, which is awesome. My goal here is whatever this number ends up being in a minute when Megan ends it, that the number of thumbs down decreases. We're going to do a poll at the end and kind of gauge, if you're more comfortable now or less, maybe I did a bad job, right? But either way, good. So we're at 90%. We'll conclude the poll and you guys can click done on your screen if it does not go away for some reason, and it'll eliminate it so you can see the presentation. So thanks, Megan. So onward now, we just mentioned, right, we'll cover both virtual and in-person career fairs and some notes here on the left and the right. So starting with virtual on the left, chat room style forum, be mindful of that. And there's only one company per room, right? If you think about if you're at an in-person event, even if it's not a job fair, it's an expo, or if it is a job fair, you got companies here, there, and everywhere, right? In a virtual setting, it's different. It's typically just that one employer in that space with you. And there's usually as well a webcam option. So Andrea, and a bit of a different topic earlier today, but went over digital interviewing and how to present on camera and the space in the background and things like that. So in a few days, all the sessions will be posted. You can refer to that and others for how to do things effectively in the virtual space, which may help for career fairs as well in a virtual setting, because again, your background does represent you, right? You don't want any craziness going on in your background or things like that. So I say for a job fair, like keep it basic, maybe a white wall with some nice accents behind it, maybe some plants or things like that, but nothing crazy walking around or running around, right? In-person career fairs, same as we just said, right? And just a visual on it, although the picture's kind of small, you can see it, right? A lot of companies in a tight space usually can be a little overwhelming. I'm also going to help us going through this on how to make it less overwhelming when you're in that space. So the main thing here that I tell people is just, again, stay calm and remain focused. Large crowds are at job fairs, right? Especially in an on-site space, and in a virtual space, you may see a lot in the room as well, right? Oftentimes at job fairs as well, job seekers feel like they have to approach every single table. That is not the case. And I'm going to show you how to decipher what companies you want to approach and maybe you don't need to approach. So it's good. It's going to be a huge time saver once we go through what we're going to go through. Remember, I'm guilty of this too. There's no need to rush the conversation. That employer is there to service you or that recruiter for the 3 or 4 hours. Typically, that's the time frame of a fair, as long as you're there for them, right? So no need to rush the conversation. It's tough, especially in settings, whether virtual or on site, where you see a line of people maybe behind you, a bunch of craziness going on. Just be calm and patient and methodical, and know that your time is their time and their time is your time. So it's all good. And to that point, you see the second bullet: career fairs are a few hours long, not a few seconds. So make it worth your time. To help us with this and eliminating companies so you can make the most of your time and have it valuable, do your research before you go to a fair. This is what a lot of people don't do. I was guilty of it early on in my career too, is just showing up to a career fair and letting the chips fall where they may, so to speak, right? Going up to whatever companies first or it catches your eye the most and saying, oh, what openings do you have, right? And then nowadays, if you've been recently to a fair, whether it's virtual or on site, because there is a lot of similarities still, a lot of times the recruiter's response is, here's our website, go apply online, right? So in a way, you walk away from that interaction thinking, well, why did I even come? Because they could have done that without, if it's on site, wasting time, gas, etc. If it's at home, wasting the time and all that stuff. So to help with this and knowing what companies to start by approaching, I call it your A list of companies. So your A list is going to be companies that you really want to go to. B list, maybe, and you can do a C and a D list if you'd like to as well. But doing your research beforehand can eliminate a good number of companies at the fair for you that maybe you don't have to approach. For example, if you were looking in the accounting space, right, and you see a finance company, maybe like Liberty Mutual, maybe you don't go up to them. Maybe it's a STEM related company. It's specifically looking for, I don't know, environmental scientists, right? Or cybersecurity. That's not your niche. If you do your research beforehand, every company, most companies, a lot of companies nowadays have career pages, right? A lot, especially the large and mid-sized organizations. So you can look at these before you go to the fair, and all of a sudden your list of maybe 30 companies at the fair goes down to 10. Every legitimate job fair is going to have their full list of companies weeks ahead of time that are attending that event. All right. So again, remember, fairs are a few hours, not a few seconds. It's okay to be late. My personal recommendation, and you'll hear different schools of thought. My opinion is not the be all end all. But after doing your research, like we said, you'll find that that number goes from about 35 to cutting at least half, right? Or I said 30, maybe it goes to 10, could be even less. Therefore, do you really need to show up? Let's say the fair starts at 12 noon. Do you really need to show up at 12 noon? Or is it okay, maybe, can you get away with, we'll say, showing up at 1 or 1:30 if it goes till 3, right? I'd say you can get away with showing up at 1 or 1:30. With that being said, it's okay to be late, because you don't have to worry about speaking to all of the companies at the fair. Whereas if you don't do this research, you feel like you have to show up right away and talk to everybody and anybody, right? You can actually have the conversations that you need to in much less time. An analogy I use is if you're invited to a party, you don't want to show up if the party starts at noon or the lunch. You don't want to show up at 1, right? That's rude. Might be over. Who knows? Job fairs are different. Again, the recruiter's there for a set amount of time. If it's 12 to 3, they're there until 3. They're not going to pay attention to when you walked in the door. Interviews are different, right? You obviously want to show up 10 to 15 minutes early. An actual fair is a long-term thing. So it's okay to show up later. And oftentimes, left to right, now to the visual on the slide, the left is at the beginning of a fair, right? Everybody crashes the party, so to speak, and they're all there right on time. you got a million people, and recruiters are overwhelmed too, right? Just like the job seekers. Don't think recruiters are necessarily immune to feeling like, holy cow, there's a lot going on here. On the right, that's what a fair will look like typically in the last hour, half hour. Recruiters are still there. That's great. So, this is what we mentioned before. Do not let this happen to you. Thanks for coming. Please apply online, do the handshake and everything, right? You want to apply before you go and do your research before you go. If you can apply, if you do this, apply online for any roles that you're interested in before you attend. Um, you will excel at a job fair, because what recruiters are used to on the other side of the table is having that statement ready. Thanks for coming. Please apply online. Thanks for coming. Please apply online. Where are you located? Telling them where they're located, right? Do your research beforehand. You will totally stick out. What happens then if you do your research and actually find a job and apply online beforehand? Your conversation essentially becomes a follow-up phone call, whether it is in a virtual space talking to that recruiter or on site, right? Because how many times do we remember we LinkedIn message a recruiter, email, call to follow up, leave a voicemail, you never hear back, right? Well, now that recruiter is right in front of you. This space is your follow-up phone call. You just have to do, like Megan said in the chat, your preparedness beforehand. Do the legwork, make yourself stand out. I can't tell you, and you can see this firsthand. If you go to an on-site job fair, or even in a virtual space, look at the people and listen to the people before you and after you. Same question. What roles do you have available? Typically. So your conversation is going to be totally different because they cannot come back to you and say, well, you need to apply online, right? You you want to make sure that you've done that before, so that becomes a different conversation. All right. So also we talked about there, if there is a line, right, before and after, network with other job seekers as well. Don't just stand there while there's four people before me and get out your phone or whatever. Talk to other people. We're all here to help each other. I mean, we're sharing LinkedIn profiles and information about our program in the chat, for example, right? People like to help people. So talk to the person behind you, in front of you. Maybe they're in healthcare and you're in accounting. Well, maybe you just happen to hear about a job that may help them, that you can let them know about, or you know somebody in their field where that can help them. And on the flip side, they may be able to help you. Always offer to help though, right? And stay in contact. It's easier nowadays than 10, 15 years ago, before LinkedIn or any of those things really existed fully. Now you can exchange contact information pretty easily, and stay in touch with that person in a virtual space, or maybe even become friends. And then down the line, that may benefit you as well. The other secondary benefit that I feel like this has is it loosens you up before you talk to that actual employer. If you imagine yourself standing there just stiff, before talking to that employer for 10 minutes in line, well, if you've been having conversations, then your speech and your dialogue just kind of may more naturally flow with that employer. And it may actually help with your confidence too, even though it's just another job seeker, so to speak, that you talk to in line, right? Good comments in the chat too. So thank you. Keep them coming for sure. We should have time for questions. Like Megan said as well. So feel free to pop them in the chat, and Megan will look at them, we'll log them, and see what we got at the end, and be able to address them. So volunteering at job fairs as well, and its benefits. I wanted to go over this. In general, it's good to volunteer, right? We know this. Put it on your resume, and you can definitely network as well. I always say, especially if it's on site, more so. Online may be a little more difficult. You can still reach out to the organization to see if they need assistance, but on ground job fairs, it wouldn't hurt to have volunteers, right? So I always say at least reach out to the organization to see some of the roles that you may be doing. You may be signing people in. You may be putting name tags, etc., on tables. You may be greeting employers and walking them to tables. You may be in charge of a refreshment area that they typically have for employers. Any of those ways that I just mentioned, and maybe some others you can think of, you're going to be interacting with the recruiters, right? The hiring managers. This is Daisy just said it, it's gold. You're the first person, the first or one of the first faces or the consistent that they see. Also, they know right away that you're kind of VIP, so to speak, and you're volunteering. You probably have a name tag of some sort as well if you are volunteering, which further calls it out. So it's absolutely a great resume builder, but a chance to talk to folks as well. If you lead them to the table to show them where their table is, well, nobody's even in the job fair yet because they're not letting job seekers in. Well, if you're a job seeker, there you go. You're right there in a formal setting, where you can have that conversation with them, and it's just gold, like Daisy said. Additionally, the career fair organizers will also advocate for you if they know that you're a job seeker because you went the extra mile to help them, right? So it's a win-win-win. You get volunteer experience on your resume, great for networking and etc. All right. So practicing your elevator pitch and handshake with a B-list company. So elevator pitch, just to go over it, is your 15 to 20-second, I'll call it speech or spiel, for lack of a better word, about why a company should hire you and why you're interested in that company. It's difficult, right? 15, 20 seconds, but you'll rehearse it enough and get it. But anyways, your B-list companies, I say, are good to sometimes practice on. So there's a couple things here. One is if you see right away, well, online they don't have any openings listed, so I'll make this one of my first companies to go to. For example, if you are healthcare and then you see an accounting firm, right? Well, maybe you go to that accounting firm first because they have absolutely nothing that necessarily fits you. However, you get a handshake out of the way, you get an elevator pitch out of the way, you get to have a conversation. It warms you up, right? And if you're a healthcare student, maybe for example, HCA is a healthcare organization you're interested in, which is a larger one. Now you go to HCA, your third or fourth company down the line, after going to a few of your B list companies, um, and you feel more rehearsed, right? You feel confident, you feel more equipped versus just walking in and saying, immediately I want to go to my A list HCA, which I get it, right? Everybody does, right? But just take that into account that can actually really help you to ease your mind and just kind of get that practice, right? Um, so and also, additionally, another example of a great company to speak to that says on there is sales companies. Um, Great companies to talk to. Even if you're not looking at sales, remember these folks know a lot of people. So there's that benefit as well. You have to be a little selfish at these job fairs, right? I hate to use it like that word, but think about what you can do for you to most impact your experience at the job fair for the time you took to be there. And this is something you can do. Just have that conversation, warms you up, gets you that elevator pitch, but also depending on the conversation goes, their wheels may start turning and say, "Oh, well, you're interested in HR, like the one student here was. Well, we work with this company, and I have a direct connection with their VP of HR, right, or something like that." So you never know where a conversation can go. There was also, I don't know, thank you. Somebody made a point earlier about not showing up necessarily too late to a fair, and that is accurate because if it is a dead fair, so to speak, some employers will pack up early. Typically at fairs, recruiters have to pay a fee to be there, but if it's dead, they have other things to do, regardless of whether they paid or not, right? So I do think that's a fair point, and definitely 12 to 3, for example, right? You don't have to show up right at 12. I wouldn't show up right at 12 unless you literally need to talk to every company, which is rare. But don't show up at 2:15. 2 o'clock is probably even cutting it, depending on how many companies you have to talk to. So that was a good point. Awesome. So we'll go to poll question number 2. We're about concluded here. So compared to the beginning of the session, do you feel more adequately prepared to effectively attend a job fair? Yes or no? So Megan will let us know about this and we'll go from there. Well, my percentage difference is positive right now, so that's good. always look at the attendance too. Not less people than when I started, so that's also fair. I was worried about running out of time, so sorry if I talk too fast, but good. Thanks, Megan. 22 responses. Awesome stuff in the chat too. So thank you all for attending and everything. We'll answer Q&A. We're here for another 20 minutes. So this is definitely the time to ask questions and put anything in the chat that you have. Comment I'll read that just came in to warm up at an in-person career fair. Walk up to those table representatives that don't have a line, right? At the same time, you are making connections and you never know what that might lead to. That's also an excellent point. Not just by industry, but by line length, right? If you're not interested, time saver, huge, right? So good stuff. Thanks, Dolores. All right. Any questions? Feel free to go ahead, Megan.
Yeah. I was going to say the chat is open, so please feel welcome to share your questions. I actually have a couple questions here for Peter myself, so I'll maybe get us started, and if it helps at all, then anyone can jump in with their questions. I'll keep an eye on things. So, Peter, do you have a an opinion on whether virtual career fairs are as helpful as in-person career fairs?
So thank you for the question. Initially, no, I think it's all about how you attend the fair and present yourself, right? And like you were saying earlier yourself, Megan, like preparedness, right? Because either way, you're still going to get that chance to do that one-on-one with an employer. Virtual fairs have the potential to have a larger audience because there's no commute time needed, right? No money needed for gas, etc., parking. Similarly to a remote job, right? The applicant pool is going to be much larger. So there's that factor, right? As far as like if you want to call it impact, but an in-person fair, and you also, but either way, right? You can show up not at the beginning or log on not at the beginning to kind of get around that, etc. But good question. You know, I think both are good, right? Or as a recruiter, you wouldn't be seeing both. You'd be seeing one or the other. Now that we've all seen the virtual world evolve post pandemic. Virtual fairs are definitely more of a trend now, and I think they'll continue to be a trend just because of budget from a recruitment standpoint. So even if you don't necessarily, yes, they're impactful as a job seeker. If you prefer in-person job fairs, I actually do too. Fact of the matter is, it is what it is, and we have to get better at being better at virtual fairs because they're not going away. Budget, time, everything, right, on the recruiter front. So good question.
Sure, yeah. And virtual career fairs, from my experience in career services, are a great opportunity as well for you to really flex your remote experience, right? To understand what it might look like to join a remote meeting and to interact with individuals in a professional setting. So, keeping that in mind, that virtual career fairs are really an extension of that remote space if that's an area that you have interest in. So you want to get comfortable with something like that.
Good point.
Um, okay. So we had a maybe it was a little bit more of a statement than a question, but Tracy had shared that she was finding it a little bit difficult to find jobs with her past experience. So I wonder, Peter, what are your thoughts about how a job fair can help you sort of put your best foot forward?
Yeah, all the things we just mentioned, right? However, I'll tell you, I guess my favorites out of it would A plus be apply online before you attend. I think regardless of your type of experience as related to maybe the job you're going for, because that can be tough, right? I get it. Like in an interview, especially trying to translate how your skills would be transferable to that role. If you can apply online before you attend, that level again preparedness just just speaks volumes. Because if I'm a recruiter and I see, oh my gosh, the past 15 people I talked to, none of them had applied online. You've applied online. I don't care if your experience isn't necessarily uniform with that. I'm at least going to give you more of a chance of a conversation for, maybe a type of position that maybe you don't fall in line for. And the other thing too you can do is just network and talk to people, maybe talk to the fair organizers because they are in tune more so with the actual employers typically at that fair than maybe you would find on a website, or just maybe think maybe this one may be in line or not. But the fair host may say, you know what, they actually like this type of candidate that doesn't fall in line with their type of position. Same with this company. This company I wouldn't go to. They'll give you that streamline advice. Great question.
Yeah, and so Tracy, I would add to that as well that um, everything Peter said, and career fairs are a chance to maybe um, get in front of somebody who works for the organization to represent yourself, and then they can't deny what a strong candidate you are at that point, right? So when you are applying online, you are maybe sending something out to a company that you don't have any connection with, any contacts with. And it can be a little bit easier to discard applicants in the time that we live in, right? Where it's, where it's really, there's a lot of people applying for a lot of jobs. So going to a career fair and bringing your best self to it using the strategies and the tips that Peter has shared, whether it's virtual or in person, being able to just show up there and really represent yourself well, then they might say, you know what, I had the chance to engage with Tracy. She was knowledgeable, she was professional, she was prepared. Let's take a second look at her application. So I think that could be a really great opportunity to help you with some of what you've been experiencing. Um, Okay, another great question here. What are the best ways to find an in-person career fairs in a certain area? So we all know SNHU, we have a large number of online students. So while some of you may be able to attend career fairs in person on campus, if you are a campus learner or if you live near enough to campus to attend, but for many, that's not possible. So that's a beautiful question. What are the best ways to find in-person career fairs in a particular area? In the newspaper, Eventbrite, or any other recommendations? You're muted.
That's needed. So I love Eventbrite, first of all. Great space. That's the actually one of my go-tos is sites like Eventbrite. Meetup.com, that's more for networking in smaller groups, but you will find some there. I've seen some in the past. Honestly, Google job fairs in whatever city or town you're in or near. I've found a lot that way, and that brings you to the Eventbrite pages, right? Or similar pages in your city where they have some things. And then a question that kind of trended before in correlation with that, once you find those resources that came through, is like, how do I know what companies are there? It didn't list what companies are there. If it's a fair that stated time and date that doesn't have the list of companies transparent, you may want to evaluate whether or not it's worth your time. There should be a way to find it. Contact the fair organizers or the organization that it's through, ask them that way, look online, etc. If you can't find it, then that could be a potential alarm. It's not necessarily a no, but that's the benefit of what we're talking about, right? Is being able to get that info ahead of time. Handshake as well. There are, and Megan talked about this before, just going to job fairs and where I forget, sorry, Megan, exactly how you phrased it, but it made me think about Handshake and referring to that as there are fairs and events posted on Handshake that you can check out at any time. So use that as a resource as well. And some are on ground, some are virtual with the fairs and events. So and Denise mentioned in the chat, chambers of commerce, absolutely. They know everybody and anything right in your area usually. So
Awesome. Okay. I love this question by Stephanie in the chat. She says, if you applied for a job online and then went to the career fair and met them in person. So going off the tip that you suggested, Peter, what is something that you could do that might end up then botching you getting the job? You know, really, you did all the right things, but what could be a misstep when you get there?
Yeah, so if you get the interview, that's the first step, right? That's the goal, is getting your foot in the door, is getting that interview. I can't tell you fairly like what would botch that interview, right? We all know that there's things that, like getting into the interview conversation, that could negative like affect you having a poor interview. Again, referring to that session earlier, Andrea really dives deep into that. So with the YouTube link we'll put in the chat at the end, check that out. However, if you're talking about just getting to that interview, right? Point A is meeting them at the fair and let's schedule the interview. Things that could botch it is maybe a lack of follow-up. Um, I, I I hate to think that that's like, I just want to say that just in case, right? It's not thought of, but ask for the business card in addition to having that conversation and telling them you applied online. If they don't have business cards, ask them if you can connect on LinkedIn or just write down their email or some line of communication where you can have that follow up. Because even though I said technically it is a follow up phone call, being it a conversation virtual with a person or in person, if the interview's not scheduled, it's still not scheduled, right? So that's a way that you can um, get around maybe botching, so to speak. That next step is just covering all your bases and doing your due diligence, right? Can't guarantee it's not 100%. None of this is 100%. If it was, we wouldn't be having this presentation. We'd be telling you just do this and you're golden, right? So
Sure. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful answer. And I think maybe to some of the heart of what you're asking as well, might be things as simple as, you know, make sure you are dressed professionally, that you know, are able to speak to the role that you applied to. So, you know, you're confident in what the name of the role is, what the duties are, when you applied for it. Um, you know, be able to give your elevator pitch when you go there and make sure that you are um, ready to kind of, you know, speak to like briefly why you're interested in them, right? Um, what is it that made you apply for that? And, you know, have that, um, have what you want to say in your mind in a very short but powerful message so that you can, you know, make sure that they have the time to talk to individuals who haven't already applied, but that you've been able to leave your mark. Um, okay, Peter. Let's
hey,
see.
to that,
Oh,
while you're looking for it, to that
yeah.
point, Ryan asked the question kind of in line. How do I track those combos, right? Because you ended up with 5 to 10 after the job fair. Absolutely. Ryan said, should I have a spreadsheet? I'm all about spreadsheets. Ryan knows that. But have a way to track it. Maybe it's writing it down and your status with each, right? Or on a Word document, whatever works for you. Absolutely, because you will lose track. Nobody in their head, and at least I can't, could keep track of 5 or 10 different status update conversations. One maybe have interview scheduled, one maybe didn't have a business card but applied, one maybe had a business card, messaged them on LinkedIn to follow up, right? So different points of it. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. So we had someone ask, they went to a job fair recently, but they weren't able to find any information about the vendors. Is that common practice?
No, I would say no. So if you went to a fair, and so you're saying beforehand online, you weren't able to find anything, and that's where we talked about too, right? Like, um, I trust that you did your due diligence, whoever asked the question. And if you're in a situation where you did not or can't or just didn't think of it, make sure to do those things, right? And again, if those things can't, if you just can't find it, it's it is what it is, right? We just talked about how you will go mostly, absolutely, with the larger mid-sized companies who have those applicant tracking system, online applications, and they are going to tell you, here's our website, apply online. So just having knowledge of that, I guess, talking it through now in this presentation, that how you can separate yourself and how there's a strong potential if you don't apply online before, it's just going to be that standard. Here's our website, apply online. Um, Knowing that information and maybe now evaluating that if you truly can't find that info beforehand and saying, you know what, since I know what I know, maybe it's not worth my time in attending as much, but maybe it is. It's not 100%, right? Maybe they see your resume, you haven't even applied online, and you just click and it clicks with them. And you would have never known that if you didn't go still. So
Great tip. Peter, this one could put you on the spot a little bit, so I don't know if it'll work, but
okay.
somebody's asking, would you be able to give an example of how to introduce yourself in under 20 seconds? So I'm thinking like presumably like your welcome statement.
Yeah, sure. So Denise actually provided a really good example. Scroll up in the chat too for folks. You can see that. Thank you, Denise. Also, I'll give one scenario. So let's just say there was a person in HR here looking to get into HR, and let's say you were applying for a generalist role. So, hi, my name is Peter Bartell. I went to Southern New Hampshire University. I have a degree in communications. I have about 10 years of experience in recruiting, career services. I really, really like to interact with people and saw your openings and that your company, your mission statement is XYZ. So thought that my skills could really be utilized for the type of work that you're trying to do. And I saw that you had a generalist role, which by my experience level really fits what I'm looking for. And the duties specifically A, C, and D really stuck out to me. So I wanted to come up and introduce myself. And I've also applied online for the position. So just wanted to follow up. It was on the spot. So you
Great
guys can
job.
grade
Yes.
my elevator pitch
Yes.
however you'd like.
Yes. As much as we recommend to everyone that you are prepared, we also prefer to be prepared in career, pulling together our information when we're going to be sharing it. So that was a great on the spot. Sort of elevator pitch or introduction there. And you are correct. Daisy gave some excellent
That
verbiage
was
in the
Daisy. I'm
chat.
sorry. Thanks,
And
Daisy.
then, no, that's okay. And then Dana actually gave us a great link to elevator pitches as well. So there's some really good resources in there for how you can polish your statements when you go to these fairs. And um, just to, I guess, follow up on that, I would say, Peter, it's great to have a statement right for a virtual fair as well. So even though you may not be interacting in all the same ways, it's probably a really good practice. If I were to guess, you could tell me yes or no, but to have something like that prepared to put in a chat like this with your LinkedIn profile, or to be able to say if you end up in a breakout room with a recruiter or something to that effect. So whether it's in person or virtual, I would think it would be very wise to have that prepared. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, Megan, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a great point. Yes, absolutely. Maybe even easier, right? Because you're going to have to tailor it for each one, or you should, but you can have a template, so to speak, to start with on a Word document, maybe two, three sentences, and copy and paste it, and then plug it in, right? The LinkedIn's going to be the same. Your my name is going to be the same. Maybe your skills you want to highlight changes a little bit. The company and the position you're applying to obviously changes. But yeah, thank you. Absolutely. It's one thing, right, to have, even if it is virtual, that live face to face, but it will not always be that, right? A lot of times online it may be chat. So I really appreciate you calling that out. Additionally, one thing I do, speaking about not a statement, but really a signature block I have that I feel like really looks clean and professional is on LinkedIn. I'll separate, like, I have my title and then my email, my name, who I work for, and I have it all templated out formally. And I just have a Word document. So anytime I send somebody a message, I'll copy and paste that as like my signature block at the bottom on LinkedIn. So it just makes it look on LinkedIn different, right? But looks a little more professional.
All right. I think we have time for one more question. So, should you take the lead at a job fair? So, jump right in, tell them you want to work there and why. Or should you let the company representative ask you questions first and then go into your spiel?
I say take the lead. You want to show that you're confident, right? In whether it is an interview or a job fair. So interviews are going to be different, right? Because typically they're going to take the lead, saying, starting off with "Tell me about yourself," or starting off with questions. At a job fair, it's pretty clear already. It goes without saying why you're there and why they're there. When you walk up to the table, they don't need to ask you really, how can I help you or why are you here? You could wait and they would start it, right? But they probably will, you'll both say hello and exchange a handshake um, and then it's off, right? So I would say, yeah, absolutely start it yourself and, just kind of tell them why you're there, etc., and kick off the conversation for sure. It shows confidence, right? I've actually been in interviews before where it's a group interview and they say, "Tell me about yourself," and they're actually looking for the person that is assertive. If you both speak at the same time, depending on the role, but a lot of times they want the person that's going to maybe keep talking or politely say, "Oh, okay, I'll go first, no problem," right? So some level of assertiveness. Thanks, Megan.
Yes, of course. Okay. Well, we are 1 minute over time, so we want to be very respectful of everyone's time here today. Um, I wanted to end with thank you so much to Peter. Um, I'm going to put some information in the chat for you here, but you can um, explore the remaining sessions that are going to be available today. We have 2 more sessions that are going to be offered at 7 p.m., really strong sessions. Um, and then please keep an eye out for the email that we'll send you after Career Day that you can fill out our survey and tell us how we did. Um, as a reminder, these sessions are recorded and they will be available on the SNHU YouTube Career Services YouTube channel in 2 to 3 business days as well. So you can come back and check out the information over again if you feel there was anything you wanted to go over again. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.